Okay, welcome to UnCaged. I had this idea to do nothing but reviews of Nicolas Cage movies. We tried to do it a couple times. It didn't work out as we thought. I went and re watched a couple, and first one wasn't good. The second was terrible also. So this new movie, Longlegs, went and saw it. Had the idea we should probably do this again. So here we are. The movie, what did you think going into it? Did you have any idea what it was or?
I didn't even watch the trailer, so I honestly didn't even know what we were gonna see other than a Nick Cage movie.
Well, going into it, that's what I thought it was, be along the lines of Mandy or the color of space, something of that nature. And from the trailer, and you really don't see Nick Cage in it. I think they actually show him in a different version than he was in the movie, if I'm not mistaken. So I think it was kind of smart like that, not to show him what he actually appeared like. So getting into the movie, it follows I have to look it up, a FBI agent named Lee Harker, and I thought it was Parker. I don't know what you thought it was. Did you think it was Parker?
No, I did hear Harker.
Okay, I didn't hear Harker. So it wasn't until the last part of the movie where I was like, okay, her name is Harker. And it follows her, and the way that the movie begins off is that there's a little girl in a house. She sees a car pull up in the road in front of the house. She dresses up to go outside. There's snow everywhere. She's looking around the house. She noticed that the person that was in the car is gone, and she hears a voice coming from behind her. So she walks around the house, and what does she run into?
So the individual that she runs into, you can't really tell who they
I
are
thought it
in the,
was a woman.
yeah. I wasn't sure. It was purposely cut off, so the shot you can only see from like nose down. Very unusual voice. So even the
Mm,
voice didn't really give it away. Kind of high pitched though, so maybe like old woman is kind of what I was leaning towards.
yeah.
Um, but just talking to this little girl, and I don't remember all of the dialect before, but right towards the end of this clip, the individual says something to the effect of, I can't move very fast because I wore my long legs today. And
So
then
that
it kind of
was, go ahead, sorry.
no, it just stops kind of from there and then moves into the next phase of the movie, but that's all you get from that in the very beginning.
Yeah. So it was creepy from the beginning, and that kind of, well, it did set the atmosphere. 'Cause right away I was absorbed into it, and it felt really dark and real wary. And I like movies like that. I don't know how you feel about movies like that, but you know what I'm about.
Hmm. The the way it was shot to lent to it being intense slash kind of creepy even from the beginning, because even the intros were filmed in kind of like an older style, and then this you could tell it was like a flashback because of
Yeah.
how it was
Hmm.
filmed. But yeah, it definitely set the mood within the first few minutes of the movie.
As it feels evil. That's what I felt. Like the whole movie all the way through, it has an evil presence to it.
Hmm.
And even I was telling you that I was falling asleep, and that's one thing I didn't tell you when I was falling asleep was I was so engrossed in the movie, I was having like weird dreams, like I would flash in and out, like because I would only fall asleep for like seconds, but I had weird thoughts in my head. So that was the type of atmosphere that it was giving you. And transitioning to the next part of the movie, it said part one, and then it showed Harker, Agent Harker, the FBI agent, and her partner. There's what I assumed there was a meeting, and they were talking about how they were searching for a guy.
So In that part, one thing I did notice is the person running the meeting said we've already pre-assigned partners, so nobody's feelings get hurt if they don't get picked. So I don't think this person was somebody she normally worked with,
Yeah.
like on a regular, like closely. I mean, obviously they all work together, but they were going out to canvas neighborhoods that fit the criteria of this individual that they were looking for. And I got the impression that he had hit multiple neighborhoods for, I assumed it was murder, but
Mm.
I, now that I think about it, I don't even know that they actually said that that's what it was. They just said that they were looking for this guy, and these are the types of neighborhoods that he's normally hitting.
Hmm. So they got to the neighborhood, they got out of the car, and they're talking about what houses to go to first. And she was saying, well, I have a feeling that he's in this house. And he was saying, well, how do you know that? And she said, well, we should call for backup. And he was like, come on, hold on, we're not going to do that. So he walked to the door, and that's what I assumed is that they were going to do instead of right away saying that they're FBI agents, because he went to the door, knocked on the door, and said, hey, FBI, before they even opened the door or anything. I thought they were going to say, well, we're, I don't know, salesmen selling solar equipment or whatever, instead of saying that we're FBI, like this guy is going to come to the door. I think for the most part, I may be wrong just seeing it through my eyes, but that was the only kind of weird part of the movie.
The way I took it is that he put zero stock in anything she said, and he did not think that there was a single person there. So he
Mhm.
just went up there cocky, like, hey, FBI, because I don't even think he believed that they would find anything in the entire neighborhood, let
Yeah.
alone believing her that this person was in this house. Like, I think he did it to humor her. And so that's why that's how I took it. Like, I
Yeah.
didn't take it like he was taking it seriously at all.
But from that, it just led you to believe that she has some type of psychic ability or sixth sense to tell that someone is somewhere, or she has the foresight to see stuff. So he's knocking on the door. The person answers the door, and he immediately gets shot in the head. She sees him on the ground, bleeding out of his head, and she runs in the house, breathing heavy, trying to look everywhere. And I thought he was going to jump out from somewhere.
Mhm.
She ran upstairs, and I was even thinking that would be a good idea, like, if you're someone in the house trying to hide. There was a box fan on the floor, and if he messed with the volume of the fan, there's no way you could tell someone was in there because it would be just nothing but the fan sound throughout. So that'd be a good way to hide, but he didn't
It
do that
would be. Well, and the empty house too. So the house was being remodeled or something. There was plastic
or
hung up
painted.
everywhere. There was no
Yeah.
furniture. So the fan would have completely masked any noise that
Hmm.
was in there. So yeah, you're right. I didn't even think about that.
But instead, she ran upstairs and he was on the bed, and she told him to put his hands up, and he did. And that's where it ended their fourth, which I just think that sequence could have been a little bit better for him. Just him surrendering out of nowhere after he killed someone. You think that he would done something to her too. Like that's all he wanted to do. I don't know.
So in the beginning, I thought that, and then as the movie progressed, I don't know, for some reason, I felt like there was some sort of vibe that she gave off, and that's why he surrendered
Hmm.
so easy. I don't
Maybe.
know. Um, but it was odd because he was just sitting up on the bed, like almost waiting for her to just come and arrest him.
Yeah.
So it
All
was
I'm
different.
saying is it was just kind of weird that he just killed one of the FBI agents and he's just going to surrender after that.
Yeah,
I
no,
don't know.
it
But
is.
henceforth, it transitioned and it went to a scene where she's being tested for psychic ability and her foresight. So there's a bunch of images that are flashed, and they're saying, what's the first word that you remember when these images flash? And she was naming off the images. And after that scene was done, it transitioned to that she was with a new partner who is Blair Underwood, and he plays Agent Carter, and which made it seem like he was the superior to her. And he commented that Well, she initially said that I don't think I'm really a psychic, and he said, well, getting 5 out of 10 correct or 50-50 correct is pretty psychic by his means, he said. So they were going to, is that what they did? Is that they went to a location looking at stuff because they were talking about the murderer they were trying to find, which is not the
But
murderer they caught. It's a whole different case.
so the yeah, this was separate. So now she's working a new case with Agent Carter, and there
Mhm.
was a third person in the car as well, and I took her to be even his superior. And so it was almost like they were just getting her started because the Agent Carter and the other lady were sitting in the front. She was sitting in the back seat, and they were looking at this house where this murder had happened. And the murder was part of the new case that she was working on.
Yeah.
But they were just talking to her about her abilities and, how long has she been like this? And then they started telling her the story of what happened at this house, which was a murder of two parents and two kids. And then that's
Was
all
it two
part of,
kids? I think it was one kid in the pasture, right?
oh, maybe you're right. So it
Yeah.
was the husband, wife, the kid, and the pastor, but it happened in this house and it was the typical, no one would have ever thought this would have happened to this family.
Hmm.
But they were at the house and just kind of introducing her, I think, to this new case and kind of giving her that background and probably honestly filling her out a little bit too to see how she was going to react to different things since she was brand new to this case.
Yeah. S- After that, they presented her with the files and they gave her, I think it was up to number 20. She went to a room or they put her in a room and she spread those on the ground and they asked her to work it out. And that's what I got the sense that she was using her psychic ability or her abilities to piece the case together. And that's exactly what she did. She was in there for hours and for so long that Agent Carter came and got her and said, well, you're still working on this? And she fell asleep. She worked on it for so long. He asked her if she wanted to go to get a drink, and she said, no, I don't drink. And they ended up going anyway. He coerced her that we should just go, even though you ain't gonna drink. So he got drunk at the bar, and afterwards, he said that, well, I should go home. And he was checking what time it is, and he was she was driving him home because he was drunk. And as they approached his house, and he was like, "Oh, the lights are on, and I'm in trouble." So when they went into the house, I thought that his wife was gonna be upset from the way that he implied, like the lights were on, and his daughter and his wife showed up, and he once again coerced her into going in the house and telling them hi. I thought it was a little bit strange or awkward because that's one thing that we forgot to mention, that the vibe that she gave off was really awkward and really odd. She's an odd person, and that's really what set the feeling to the whole movie. It was really odd and really I just got the sense of it being dark and evil, and she just did a really good job at acting.
Yeah, she did. I I don't know that I got this sense of evil right off the bat. Like it didn't take long,
Hmm.
but the sense I got from her and her awkwardness was that something bad clearly had happened to her at some point in her life. And
Hmm.
that was what was made her such a unique, odd, stiff person. She definitely isn't good with people.
Yeah.
So when she takes him home, I think she's hoping that she's just going to drop him off, and he's like, "Nope, you're coming in to meet the family." So they walk in, and her awkwardness is met with the wife and the daughter. Aside from kind of chewing him a little bit for being late, they were super nice to her.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And they never, if I saw someone like her, I'd be like, so, like, are you okay up in here?
yeah.
That has no progression in the movie. But she went to the room with the daughter and she was talking to the daughter. The daughter was asking her questions. She was apprehensively answering it. The father came in and, or maybe the daughter, or was it the father? Or maybe it was the mother asked her if she wanted to show up to the birthday party.
Yeah, so the daughter's like, "Hey, do you want to see my room like a kid does?"
Hmm.
And she's like, "Okay." And so they go in there and they're kind of having awkward conversation. And then the mom comes in and she basically is like, "Hey, it's bedtime. Are you ready to go?" And that's when the daughter said, "Can she come to my birthday party?" And the mom said, "Well, why don't you ask her?" And so she did, and Agent Harker like very awkwardly accepted. She was like, "Okay, I'll be there."
Yeah.
Which you could tell she was already uncomfortable in the situation, and then this little girl's inviting her to her birthday party.
Hmm.
So it was just it added to the obvious awkwardness that this woman experiences like every day.
But after that scene and she was driving back home alone, it kind of just enveloped into being more evil, more of an evil feel. So she drove home by herself and went in the house, and there were lights on, and the lights were so dim it looks dark. And I think I told you that I think the only place that I've ever been to like that was my old house where it had one light on and it was still dark on the inside. That's the way that I liked it. I've never been in any other house except for seeing it on TV or the movies where it's really dark like that is. But there was numerous lights on and they were just so dim, even below the light. It was dark, but it's just setting the atmosphere. I just really like the feel to it, and I like movies like that. I'm not too sure how you feel. I just like dark, feeling evil movies like that.
Yeah, I definitely think you like scary, dark movies more than I do. I'm not opposed to watching them, but I don't seek them out maybe like you do. So I went into this one for the Nick Cage factor more than the scary factor.
Yeah. And it's not like I really like horror movies like that. It's just some that you come across that are real dark feeling, and I'll just stick to them rather than try to venture out into new or old movies. I just have my set of movies that just feel that way to me. But anyway, she went back home and she was sitting at the desk in her house and she called her mother.
Yeah, she called her mom and mom answered the phone and said hello. She said, "Hi, this is Lee." Or she goes, "Hi, mom." And her mom goes, "Is this Lee?" And she said, "Yeah, I'm still your only daughter." So it was just the conversation started off um distant, for the best word I can think of in the moment. Between the two of them, it definitely seemed like a strained type of relationship, not to the point where they obviously don't ever talk since she called her, but it was very
You could take
apparent
away
that
from it that they were both weird, but in
Mhm.
perspective, you know how odd, or this is how, why the way she is, why Agent Harker is so odd is
Yeah,
because these things. But I could tell, I don't know if you did too, but it was just they're both kind of creepy.
the apple didn't fall far from the tree.
Yeah,
Yeah,
even from a phone conversation.
yeah. So as they're talking, mom's just started asking about how work is, and you can talk to me about your work if you want to. And Agent Harker says, "I can't tell you anything. These are active investigations," and uh, just going
And
back and
and
forth
that's
about.
another, sorry to interrupt, but that's another thing in perspective. She was definitely wanting to know what she was doing.
Hmm.
That's why she was asking. You could say, tell me anything at work.
Yeah. So after that, Harker was almost trying to steer the conversation in a different way, it kind of felt like, because she knows she's not going to tell her mom anything. And then her mom started asking her if she's been saying her prayers. She's like, yeah, yeah, mom, whatever. And then Harker looks up and sees something outside and tells her mom, Mom, I gotta go. I'll call you back. And just kind of hangs up on her. And so the thing that she sees outside um, appears to be a person or a human, although I know you thought maybe it could even be a spirit or a ghost.
Yeah,
But human shape, like you could tell it was human versus animal,
yeah,
um, regardless of here or not. But
yeah.
she gets up and decides to go check it out. So she's checking her house and she eventually gets her gun and decides to go outside,
Well,
which
she really didn't
you
check her
like.
house. She immediately ran outside to meet what was ever out there. And I was saying to you that it was a good idea instead of waiting for it to come to you. Why don't you just meet it and surprise it, whatever it might be? But as she was out there, she looked behind her and noticed that there was, it kind of, that's what it looked like to me. It kind of, it might have been a human, but it kind of looked like a spirit, like going through her house. So she went back in after she seen that. As she went back in and looked on her desk, there was a birthday card and said not to open until January 14th, said what it was.
Mhm. So it
And
had her
the
full name on it, Lee Harker, and then she flipped it over and it said do not open until January 14th.
and one thing that we missed about that is that Agent Carter, when she he gave her when Agent Carter gave her all the things to separate and look at, he that's one thing he emphasized is that all the murders happened on the 14th. Was that correct?
So the only connection they'd been able to derive about the murders is that in all of the families, one of the kids had a birthday on the 14th of each month. So the murders themselves didn't necessarily happen on the 14th, but
Hmm.
all of the kids had a birthday that was
On
on
the
the
14th.
14th of
Okay.
any given month.
Yeah. And what else was I gonna add to that is that oh, and they were all related by Longlegs. So we left a note and they know that Longlegs had something to do with these murders
That's
besides the
why they
14.
suspected they weren't murder suicides, is because of the notes, and they weren't the normal haha, I did this type of note. It was a coded message and they
Mhm.
hadn't been able to break the code yet.
And what transpired after that is what I thought was a passage of time because her hair was different and she had gloves on and she was opening the envelope. She read the envelope and I can't remember in particular what the card said, but it had the code that Longlegs used in it. And she started to circle letters to decipher it. And she used a key, so it had the alphabet, and she was putting those letters above what matched in the code or what he sent. And she finally deciphered it. After she did that, she went to, and that one thing I could add to it before I forget, that whole time when she was talking to her mom, she was facing a window that looked outside, where she saw that thing outside, and behind her there was a it's not a doorway. What is it?
Like an entryway.
Entryway. I don't know. I can never remember that. But behind her, you could see the kitchen, and I always thought that there was something that was going to peek in at her or get her from that doorway or that entryway, excuse me. And it never happened, but they did that really well. I could say just keeping you focused behind her so you think that something may happen, but it was just building up the tension within the movie or in the scene. But after that, she went to the field office, back to the FBI office, and they discussed how she broke the code and there was a new murder that happened. Do you remember the details for that one?
So she went back in the house, she found the letter, she opened it, and then the phone rang and her mom calling to check on her, hey, are you okay? You never called me back. And
Hmm.
then the phone rang again and she answered it thinking it was her mom and it was them calling her. So they actually went
Yeah.
to the crime scene and
Okay.
it was a new murder. So even though it felt like a long amount of time had passed because her hair and the gloves and everything, I think it was actually the same day because she got called out to the murder scene right after that.
Yeah.
The murder was another family. They were all still there, but the murder was like 3 weeks old. people hadn't realized that they were missing because they thought they were on vacation for Christmas. And so they're saying now it's 3 weeks later, which puts us right around the beginning of January, time frame wise. So I
Okay.
think she did actually open
That's a
the
good
card
observation.
early
Hmm.
because the timing of the murder, because there was a Christmas tree up at the house and everything like that, but they said it was 3 weeks old. So that would have put us right about beginning of January. So they were looking at it, and because it was so old, they were concerned that maybe she wouldn't be able to handle the crime scene.
Hmm.
Um, she said she was fine. So they went ahead and showed, and I mean, the bodies were covered in maggots, and they were just, it was 3 week old dead bodies. It was very gross, and she handled it very well. She's like, how old was the kid? And just started asking questions to figure out where this family fell in with the other murders to see if there was any additional connections that she could possibly make.
Yeah,
And
and I
then
was just
after
to
that
say
is when
that
they,
to connect it all to Longlegs
well, then
because
when
they
they
found
went
a
back to
note.
the office, that's where they figured out that it was connected.
Well, right away she was at the scene and they found the note and she deciphered the note. And do you remember what the note said? I can't remember.
Said something about it was a saying. It wasn't like a nursery rhyme saying, but it was almost like a verse, and it said something about going out to the sea. I didn't really understand the context of
Well,
the
there was,
comment at the moment.
I remember there being just four words and they were in correlation.
Hmm.
It's, I was, I think back when we watched it, because it was only a couple days ago when we watched it. Didn't you say something about nursery rhyme maybe or something? I can't remember.
It was like a so the one, okay, it is coming back to me now. It said down low, too slow. Almost
Mm,
like the give me five, high five, down low, you're too slow when you pull
yeah.
your hand out.
Okay.
And so that it was down low, too slow is what it was. Meaning you didn't catch me on this one either, maybe.
Yeah.
Um, so when they got back to the office, that's when she basically reveals that, yeah, she has figured out this code. Um, and also she figured out a cipher based off the dates of the murders in correlation with the 14th being the common date between all the victims, is that she drew them out and saw a pattern that was like an upside down triangle or pyramid.
Mm,
And the dates, they either all happened a certain amount of days before the 14th or a certain amount of days after the 14th. And there was only one piece missing in the triangle, and it was the 13th. So they concluded that that was likely going to be the next murder, and it was coming up. So again, confirming that they're in like the first week of January, and the 13th is just a few days away.
yeah. This whole time when she experiences new crime scenes or stuff going on, she either hears voices behind her at a distance or she has psychic flashes where she sees snakes or different things. And that's one of the things that happened when she figured out that triangle cipher or like how all the murders were connected and by the dates that made a triangle. She had a flash of her seeing a triangle herself of what it
Mhm.
was, and it was satanic.
Yeah.
After
So
that, what?
at that point, they're back at the office, and she decides to call her mom, let her know she's okay. So she's in like a downstairs hallway just on a payphone, tells her mom that she's okay, but that she's not going to probably make it home anytime soon, because she's going to be so engrossed in work. And her mom says to her, well, will I at least see you for your birthday? And she said, maybe, but probably not. I'm just so busy at work. And again, it was still that very strange, strained conversation. They were both odd. And mom brings up prayers again. Make sure you're saying your prayers. Know that you can talk to me about anything, those types of things. And she's like, yeah, I know, mom. It's fine. I gotta go. Bye. And hangs up with her.
Mhm. After that, they. I forget how it goes specifically, but they wanted to reinvestigate the murder scene about the father who killed the wife, the pastor, and the little kid, which they went on to reveal that one of the little girls was still alive. And they said that since the beginning, but they revealed that she was in a psychiatric institute or mental hospital. But in the meantime, what they did was they went to reinvestigate that place and they went to a barn. And how did she know that the X marks the spot thing?
In one of the messages that she decoded, it said something about X marks the spot.
Hmm.
And so that's when they decided to go back to, and it's their name was the Camera family. Camera was their last name.
Hmm.
And so when they went to the property, she was for whatever reason drawn to the barn. And when they got to the barn, it had been nailed shut, but it had been nailed shut with nails in X's.
Hmm.
And so they looked at each other, X marks the spot. So they pried the door open, went inside, exploring around. She found more X's at the stairwell leading up to the hayloft in the barn. So she calls for Carter. He comes over and they decide to go upstairs together. And they found a cross nailed to the floor up in the hayloft. And you can tell there hasn't been anybody up there in a long time. There's leftover hay and things like that, but it's dusty and grimy and it doesn't look like anybody's touched it in forever. And they find this cross nailed to the floor. And so they start prying it up and they find a compartment under the floor.
Yeah. As they pried it up, they found I can't remember what was on the sheet. It was just something in correlation where they knew that it was Longlegs. It was only up for a second, so they put that to the side and they found a doll that was lifelike. I at first thought it was a decomposed human. That's how real it was, or it might have been fresh, but it was a doll. So what they did with the doll is they took it into the FBI forensic investigator. They transitioned to being there with the forensic investigator and they were talking about it and he was saying how creepy the doll is and that it was well made, I believe that he said. Also, he scanned it to make sure there wasn't anything inside the body, but he found a metal ball bearing in the head. And that's what I was telling Dark Flowers is that he was using the ultrasound on the ball to see if there was anything inside of it to check it. And as he was checking with the ultrasound, he was hearing voices and he was saying that the voices were telling him something about his ex-wife, I believe. Is that what he said?
I think if they just said, I kept hearing voices saying my ex-wife's name. I know there's no
Yeah.
way that could be, but I know I kept hearing voices.
So he demonstrated with the ultrasound machine on the weird sounds it was making.
Hmm.
So after that, Carter insisted that he still open the ball bearing to see if there was anything inside. And he, it wasn't, they didn't show him opening it, but he just insisted there's nothing in it. I'll open it for you anyway. So when they opened it, without us seeing, there was a visitor that do you remember what the little girl in the mental institute had? Well, she's now grown. She's a grown woman now.
She's grown.
Remember
So
her name?
she was the daughter of the family. And the only reason she wasn't killed is because she was at school when the
Hmm.
murders happened. So she's at the mental institution. Her name is Carrie Ann Camera.
Okay, Carrie
And
Ann.
so the entire time she's been in the mental institution, apparently she's been catatonic, non-responsive. And right at the same time that they were doing this, she had a visitor and then was awake and lucid and fine. So it was afterwards you kind of correlate together that the timing was very close.
Yeah, and they heard about it and they knew that she was related to the case and she had a visitor. Well, who would go visit her? They need to find out who it was. So they rushed down there right away. And Carter wanted Parker to go talk to Carrie Ann. And she was seemed normal at first when they were talking, and she tried to get more information and ask her who it was, and she started to say that it's a man and that she would do anything for him and she would even kill our agent Harker if she needed be. And it just got weird after that.
Yeah, just total devotion to this visitor after being catatonic for 20 plus years, suddenly completely devoted to this person, saying, I would happily kill you if that's what he told me to do. Or if he wanted me to throw myself out the window, I would just do anything he told me to do, and I would be happy to do so. Basically, those weren't her exact words, but very clear that she would do anything and everything he possibly wanted, which is to me very strange since she didn't know who this person was and has been in this completely different state for however long until just yesterday. And now she's completely devoted to this stranger.
Yeah. So you keep on transitioning to you go from odd Agent Harker to even more odd people that they encounter, but looking at it in perspective, it's all in line that they're all odd for a reason.
Yeah.
After they visit her, is that where it goes to the hardware store? Is that where it goes?
So Carter pulls her aside after this and says, clearly Longlegs knows you somehow. This isn't
Hmm.
just a coincidence. So I pulled your file and I see that way back years ago, your mom called the police about a trespasser on your property. Do you remember this? And she says, no, I don't remember this at all. And he said, you need to go talk to your mom and find out more about this
Because
because
it was close to her birthday, right?
there's
And
something going on with this. And it was right before her ninth birthday
but why were they tipped off? I can't remember.
because of the letter having Lee Harker's name on it. And then when they got to the mental institution, they asked to see who visited, and the visitor signed in under the name of Lee Harker.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
so they knew that there was more to this than just chasing this new agent who's assigned to the case. There had to be some sort of connection. So Carter basically said, you have to go find out from your mom what happened with that. This is just too much of a coincidence. So she drives home to start talking to her mom and gets to the house. And I'll have you describe the house because I like your description of the house better than mine. It's,
And my description of the house is like controlled clutter. So it's not that of a hoarder. It's just there's junk in there, but it's just nicely organized crap. It's the best way to describe it.
yeah. So she goes in, she's having trouble locating her mom in the house and finally finds her upstairs in her room watching
I
TV.
still think it
Although,
was downstairs.
was it?
Yeah,
She was kind
because
of just blankly staring at the TV, though. Like you didn't get the impression that she was actually paying attention to what she was watching. She was kind of zoned out, I thought,
mm,
watching TV. And she looks up and she's like, oh, you're here. And the conversation seems even more awkward in person than it did on the phone.
mhm.
Maybe because the mom wasn't expecting her to come, or I'm not sure, but you could definitely tell they had a very strange relationship. And mom starts asking again, how's work? Have you been saying your prayers? And Agent Harker finally admits to her mom, I've never said my prayers.
Mhm.
And mom starts laughing, but it's not a ha ha funny, like it's a very creepy, odd. The reaction to finding out, your daughter's been lying to you since she was a little kid and has never said prayers.
Mhm.
It was just it definitely lent to the ominous, creepy feeling, especially trying to figure out what their relationship was, because you could definitely see they're two very odd people, but their relationship is even weirder.
Yeah, more strained or
Hmm.
peculiar.
Yeah.
And she told her, well, is that what she said? That the prayers don't do anything for you anyway. I
Hmm.
think that was the more what it was. It's like, prayers don't do anything for you anyway. That's more what it was.
Yeah.
But I think that she did that just looking back. why she wanted her to say her prayers is to double protect her.
Yeah.
Just to give you, put that in the air right there. She then told her, well, I'm gonna go cook you lunch, I believe that it was. Cook you some food. I think that's what she said. She went back into the kitchen and started cooking some food. That's what the next scene was. Then she heard that whisper behind her, and which led her to a doorway which led from the kitchen, but it was within the same room, that doorway. She looked at the doorway and there was either some type of beetle or cockroach. I couldn't see what was particular, but it was creepy and it ran underneath the floor. She walked to the door and she was getting these visions, psychic visions of seeing snakes. She got to the door and she couldn't open it. And right then her mother called for her.
Yeah, she reached up to grab the keys like she was going to try and get the door open,
Mhm,
and her mom called for her right then, so she stopped what she was doing and took the food to her mom. And when she got back to the room, she asked her mom, "Okay, mom, what happened on that day when I was a kid?" And her mom said, "We never had any visitors. We never had any visitors."
mhm,
And at that point, she's like, "Something had to have happened, mom. You called the police. We never had any visitors, but I left your room exactly as it was."
mhm.
So it was like, I can't tell you, or I don't want to tell you, or something, but your room is exactly how it was. So go look up there, was kind of the gist of that. So Harker goes upstairs, and this was upstairs to her childhood room and starts looking through her things. And she's going through a chest that has some of her childhood mementos and finds a stack of Polaroids. And at that point, to me, it seemed like she had like a memory flashback. Like it started coming back to her because she was looking through the photos.
Mhm.
And she actually took a picture of the trespasser that day. And it was in those stacks of Polaroids. And come to find out, it was Longlegs. So she's starting to remember more of what happened that day. So
Mhm.
I mean, to me, it was almost like she suppressed it because her mom eventually convinced her to suppress it.
I just
Some
had a revelation that this whole time she might have been in a trance. That's why she was this odd. And the reason why I thought of that we'll say later, which was in correlation to the girl at the mental house where she snapped out of things. I
Yeah.
think that was why. So I think that's why she was so limited and odd in her interactions. But anyway, she took the photo back to Agent Carter and said, this is what he looks like. So right away after that, did it go to the hardware store?
So Carter sees the picture and definitely believes her,
Mhm,
unlike the previous one who didn't think anything. He was like, "Are you sure?" And she's like, "I'm absolutely sure." And he's like, "All right, we're going to call it in." And then it changes, and we see Longlegs driving down the road in an older car. And at this
But the
point,
hardware store happened before that, didn't it? I'm
no,
pretty
I think
sure.
this is in between.
Think so?
So, yeah, I do.
Hmm.
So he's going to the hardware store. He's driving an older car. Um, and he was even acting weird in the car, like kind of mumbling and saying things. So he gets to the hardware store. I couldn't tell what he bought, but we found out that it was what, headphones and a
Something with a
jar of
cap. I
some
can't
kind.
remember.
Yeah. So goes up to the counter to purchase these items, and it's a young girl working the counter. And she looks up at him and yells down the hall, "Dad, that gross guy is back again." And gives him his items and he leaves. And as he's driving back to his, I guess, presumably home, he starts just yelling in the car. And his yelling was the most terrible noise you've heard.
Yeah,
Like
and
it
that's how
was
you know that it
awful.
was Nick Cage because the character he plays in this movie is just so weird and unusual because of the face makeup they put on him. I'm sure it's like a mask and then they
Mhm.
covered it up with makeup. It was just so good, but that's how you know from him yelling that, oh yeah, that's Nick Cage. So
That
that's
was the Because
It's
otherwise you wouldn't be able to tell it's him. If you saw it, you
yeah,
cannot tell. They did such a good job with it.
yeah. It was an
But
old
yeah,
lady, if you didn't know.
there was enough of his voice in the yell, as weird and creepy and terrible as it was,
Hmm.
that you're like, okay, yeah, that's definitely Nick Cage.
Okay.
So he gets back to, like I said, I was presuming he was going to his house, but he walks into like this workshop area, and you can tell it's full of stuff for dolls.
Hmm.
And there's a doll in process. Another one of those ridiculously lifelike. I mean, it looks like a real human doll. I think back to the examiner, I think he actually used the word exquisite because it
Hmm.
was so well done.
And that's one thing that they show afterwards is that the doll, they put a cover over the doll and you could see the eyes glowing. So it's like them saying that the doll is self-aware or
Mhm.
there's some type of evil to it that
There's
or that it
some,
creates.
yeah, there's something more to the doll than just being porcelain and fabric and wood.
So we
So,
speculated on that is how he ended up getting caught because the next scene was FBI agents racing to meet him at the bus stop. So he was at a bus stop and he had luggage. He had two bags and he was standing there expecting to get arrested. So afterwards, I suggested that maybe they found out somehow how at the hardware store that the daughter warned the father. The father knew that they were looking for him because Agent Harker presented this is what he looks like. So maybe people knew that's what he looked like and they were looking for him and the father went and reported about him right away like this is
mhm.
what he was driving, this is he was there at my hardware shop. So that was the only thing I could think of. Besides that, it's really an empty space of why they did it that way. I guess you just had to catch that or presume it yourself, because if you just took it for what it is, it's like they showed up out of nowhere and it was like, okay, he's standing there and they arrested him.
Yeah, they showed up out of nowhere. He's standing, he goes in willingly, like there's no fight, there's no, so it was almost like at the beginning of the movie where the guy just suddenly surrendered with no fight.
Hmm.
And he did the same thing, and it was very strange because I can't imagine two serial killers going in so quietly
Yeah,
after such, I mean, because it was just minutes before that that we're seeing him in a rage in his car screaming. So
yeah,
yeah, it was very odd. But yeah, he's at the bus stop with his luggage, and then next thing you know, he's just getting arrested. Like nothing else happened in between. So it felt very disconnected.
yeah. And
It-
two, this creep living this long around this neighborhood and going day to day, there, I don't know what I, if I was to encounter this person, I don't know what I'd do. It's,
I
and no
don't
one
know
would
either.
suspect anything like who the fuck is this guy? Or the local police have never seen him. I mean, digging more deep into it is like, I think the local police would think this guy's fucking creep and suspect him as something because he's so odd.
Well, and at first I thought it was weird that the little girl called him gross rather than other words,
Hmm.
like this weirdo or this creep or this whatever. But I mean, I guess gross still works because he's so pale in color, makes me look tan.
Yeah.
He
He's
has
kind of like he
no,
stepped out of a Tim Burton movie. That's how white
Mhm.
he was.
Yeah. So it's just very, so I guess maybe a younger, because what would you say she probably, I mean, like early teenager is what she was. She was old enough to be working a counter at her dad's
Yeah,
shop, but she
say
wasn't by
16,
herself.
17. Yeah.
Yeah. And she, yeah, that gross guy's here again. So I did think that was a little odd choice of words, but I guess in retrospect, it does
I
match
would
him
call him
too,
gross
because he
too.
was gross. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was just a very strange man.
Yes.
And equally awkward to everyone else. Like, I mean, just his movements, he was stiff as a board. Yeah, just everything about him was gross.
Yeah. Sicko. That'd be a good. He
Yeah.
did a very well job acting the part because he's just
Hmm.
such an unusual character. After that, they acknowledged that he was arrested. And what did you say? The way you described it, about underneath the floor because Agent Harker and Carter ended up at the station and they were talking to each other that they got him. And what did they say, or what did
Well,
you
they
see
were,
reference?
and they were talking with Agent Browning as well. So she was
Mhm.
like the third agent that's only in once in a while. And she was basically saying, Harker, we can't thank you enough for what you've done for this case, but we're potentially going to run into an issue because you clearly have some sort of connection to this case above and beyond just being an agent on this case. Like, what are we going to do about this? And at that moment, Harker's like, well, where is he? And Browning says, he's right below your feet in the basement. So she goes down to talk to him, which there was two things I thought was weird. If they thought she was going to be like a conflict on the case, why they let her go down and talk to him, I thought was weird. And then I also thought it was weird that she went down there by herself to talk to him, but you had a good point on that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I mean, that's foreshadowed them saying he's underneath your feet. That foreshadowed something that we'll talk about later. And what did the other thing before I forget, did I say that foreshadowed something? I guess it was just her going to reach for the door. It might have been. I think it was.
Yeah.
I can't remember specifically. I'll think about it later. But what I was leading into, or what I told you, is that he sent her down there, Agent Carter, because he knew who she was and thought that if he was familiar with her, that she'd be more into that he, Longlegs, would be more into revealing things to her rather than just having a regular FBI agent go in and try to interrogate him. She might possibly get more out of him.
And that was also why she was in there alone, because he might be more willing to share with her in there
Yes.
by herself. So
Mhm.
that made sense, even though I still thought it was very strange for her to go in there by herself.
Yeah. And
But
before we get into anything else, may I mention that because I'm sure people are, it was like a ultra diverse movie in that there was nothing but women and Agent, or what's his name? What's his real name? Agent
Blair Underwood.
Blair Underwood. And I think he was the most the nicest looking person, normal person in the whole movie. But besides that, I think people are going to say, well, she's a nice, this has never happened before, or maybe it has you because you said that, like the Silence of the Lambs, it kind of felt like that, where she was an FBI agent, because I've never seen that movie before.
Hmm. The I'm gonna say the vibe of the movie, because I can't think of a better way to describe it, but like the ambiance or the atmosphere of the movie reminded me of The Silence of the Lambs,
Hmm.
because it's always very dark and very creepy. But if you think about it, like the basic part of the storyline is the same. You have a female FBI agent who's young, not everybody likes her, going in trying to solve this serial murder. So there's a lot of correlation in there. And so I thought maybe I was just subconsciously relating it back to that because some of the details were so similar.
Yeah. And what I
But
thought is that there already was an even stronger female FBI agent in Scully in the X-Files, and she was pretty kick-ass, and she was able to holster her weapon well, unlike the the FBI agents in all reality in
yeah.
of today. But she encountered weird stuff and serial killers, so that's what made me correlate with things as into you thinking that of Silence of the Lambs. I just wanted to bring that up.
No, it is. But it echoes, like, as odd as she is, and even sometimes her reactions to things, like her really heavy breathing when something happens.
That would be a good thing to say. Like if Mulder and Scully had a baby, this would be her.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. So, because you can tell, and to me, yes, the psychic ability obviously helped her to figure things out, but I felt like she just was keen to the position anyway. Like, I mean, obviously, she wouldn't have been near as good at the job had she not had these visions and things like that. But for whatever reason, the oddness in her, it just seemed to fit that she went into this role. And maybe it is because of the Clarice Starlings and the Scullys of the world, previous to this movie have told us that sometimes the weird chick is the most badass one on the team. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe. But so after she goes downstairs, she goes in, they start talking, just the two of them. There's a camera in the room recording it all. You can see that sitting behind her. And I can't remember anything honestly specifically that he said in the first couple minutes of their conversation, other than if you didn't think he was a creep before, you absolutely did now. Like
Yeah.
he laid it on even thicker than he already had, and I didn't think he could be creepier until you got in a room by yourself with him, and then he was even creepier.
Yes, and he just was talking about how he knew and kind of just to mirror what his her mom was saying that we can believe that you were or we saw that you're going into being a cop or law enforcement and all that. And I can't remember in particular what he said, but one thing that stuck out is that he was talking about Satan and doing his work and all that. And after that, he talked for a little while and he proceeded to bang his head on the desk he was cuffed to over and over so hard that it his nose fell off, that his teeth were falling out, I believe, and
Mhm.
he just smashed his whole head into the desk until he died.
So just prior to that, to kind of echo off what you just said, Carter and Harker have been talking this whole time, not the whole time, but recently they're like, he has to have had an accomplice. There
Hmm.
has to be somebody else helping
Yeah,
him.
that's what
But they
happened.
had no proof of it at all. They just,
Hmm.
again, kind of that hunch. And when she was talking to Longlegs prior to him doing the face smash, he said, "We laughed so hard when you decided to go into law enforcement."
Yeah,
So it
forgot
just
about that.
confirmed
And
to
then he
her,
pressed him about who his accomplice was. Okay, I
and
remember
that's
now.
when he smashed his face.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, and I mean, the makeup crew on this movie, again, kudos to them because it was the most believable, gross thing. I mean,
Yeah.
but his nose was hanging off and the teeth were on the
Oh, it
table.
was
I mean,
completely gone.
his his face was flat, like the pug version of a human, but bloody. I don't know. It was amazing how they did that scene. And just,
It was computer generated.
yeah, maybe. I don't know. Even then, they did a good enough job at it that we didn't know it was computer generated. So, because
Yeah.
sometimes in movies you can tell. But
Mm.
so it felt like an eternity to me. Agents finally came running in the room because she's in there by herself. You would think that they would still be outside the room. I would presume observing the whole thing in real time. But he was able to smack his face on the table 5, 6 times,
Hmm.
and she got up and backed away from everything before a single other person entered the room. So that to me, and again, maybe it wasn't that long, but it felt like an eternity before anybody even got there to help.
Yeah, I'm sure that's how it is when you're in situations that are deadly. It seems like it lasts longer than it does.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is.
So, and she, considering how upset she'd been prior to this when she'd been in a situation. So in the very beginning of the movie, when she's trying to scour the house to find the guy after he just shot her partner in the face, or when she's looking through the house trying to find the heavy breathing and, like you said, hyperventilating, heavy breathing. And
Yeah,
then when she had this happen, she was upset for sure, but she wasn't freaked out like she had been in those other situations. Um, I don't want to call it calm, but she had a calmness to her that I almost just took as she definitely wasn't sad that he had just done this right in front of her.
yeah,
Like you could tell she was shook, but she was fine with what just happened.
yeah. That she was happy that he was finally gone.
Hmm.
He was the creep to the 10th power.
Yeah.
But after
But
that,
they went to talk
Carter
to Carter. Yeah.
mhm, said that there's something that you're your mom ain't telling you that you need to go and talk to your mom. So she went in the car, or do you have
Well, and
anything to
I'm
add to
gonna
that?
I'm gonna stop you for a sec because to echo off what you said earlier, Carter is the most normal, likable person in the movie because everybody else is just so odd, like
Mhm.
either socially awkward or just full on creep.
He's the
And
only one that's normal.
he's a normal guy.
Mhm.
You know, I go home to my wife and kid and I do all this stuff and I act normal and I go
Yeah.
out and have drinks I mean, he was just a normal guy, but never angry, never anything. And when this happened, he was mad. And he was like, that was our only lead, and now he's gone. So I guess you better go figure this out and find out what the heck's going on with your mom, and just like storms off. But it was the first time you had ever seen him with any sort of anger or anything. I don't want to say negative because it's not necessarily negative to be angry, but it was just the first time you had seen him with any sort of emotional outburst at all. He had just been so normal up to this
Yeah.
point.
Which is understandable because they've been searching this guy for years. So
Hmm.
that they finally got him and this happened. So it's reasonable. He's the only reasonable, sane character.
In the movie.
Yeah.
So Agent Browning drives her to her mom's house and she's in the car. Thank you so much for bringing me. And she's like, I wasn't going to let you drive after what you just saw.
Hmm.
So they get to the mom's house. They're trying to decide how to go about it
And one
because at
thing, what
this
was the
point,
name of the agent again? I'm sorry that Harker was
Agent
with.
Browning.
So Browning, I don't know if it was just me, but I thought she was very odd looking. I thought she was akin to the clown that rides the tricycle in the Saw movies. I thought she just looked weird. Maybe that's not to insult her or anything, but she looked odd to me.
I almost feel like they did her character that way on purpose because after I looked at pictures of her not in the movie, she looks normal outside the movie.
Maybe.
So I don't know. I mean, yeah,
Not to
she's
insult her or anything, but
no,
she
but
looked odd to me.
she was odd. And she was older too, I think, because Agent Harker, I got the impression was probably what, like mid 20s. Like she's definitely not old.
Yeah,
Um, but they're in the car and basically they decide Harker's like, I'm going to go in and I'm going to talk to her and I'm going to tell her she has to come in because we have additional questions. Like there's clearly more to this than what we've been told.
yeah.
So Browning stays in the car while Harker goes in the house. And Browning's looking around at the mom's property and finds like a carport with a car parked in it and it's been
No, no,
covered.
what happens is that Harker notices that that Longlegs car that she initially saw way back when she was a kid, she recognized it and it was uncovered a little bit and thought, "Ooh, that's Longlegs' car." So
Hmm.
that's who recognized it.
Well, Browning saw it too, though, because as she was sitting in the car,
Mhm.
she looked over and saw the car and had come uncovered. And by then they had a description of the car because of Harker.
Yeah, I
And
think that's the
I,
case, but there was more the other way, in my opinion, that you knew as the audience that Harker knew then that her mom had
Mhm.
something to do with it by seeing that car. I think that's what the intended scene was supposed to be.
No, I agree with that. But I also think that Browning put two and two together while she was sitting in the
I think
car.
she was just sitting in the car.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. We'll agree to.
Anyway, we'll
But
agree to
at
disagree.
that moment, Harker's mom comes up to the car dressed in a nun's outfit,
Hmm.
or is there some because it wasn't the black and white
The
habit. It was
reason
like
that
a
she
habit, but
did
it was.
that is it was later revealed because they have a flashback of the father, the camera family, that she went to their doorstep and she was dressed as a nun. She had a doll with her, and that's essentially how that they would do the murders and they would become entranced because at the beginning of the movie there was saying that they theorized that there was no way that this person could have did such a thing, that they believed that they might have been under control of something. So
Mhm.
that's what she would do is she would go to the house, arrive at the nun, she would arrive at the door, they'd answer the door and she said, well, I'm from the church and the church chose you to get this prize, and the prize would be a doll, and the doll would have precedence in that it would be given to the little girl and whatever was in the doll. And you could tell from the eyes and the weird things that whatever Longlegs put into it that he was putting the spirit of the devil or whatever he used, magic into the doll to possess the family. And that's how they proceeded to murder the whole family. So it shows a flashback of the father, the camera father in the house, and there was a pasture right by him, and he took an axe to him. And then the mother, she was possessed too, and she ran up to the daughter in the house. And this is the family of the daughter, what's her name, Carrie Ann, that was in the mental
Arian.
institute. And you've just seen it from the perspective of the daughter. So through the eyes of the daughter that was there on scene, that she was just looking, she couldn't move or anything. So that just set precedence that the doll had possession of her. And that's what also led up to a little bit later in the film, just after this events, that there was nothing they could do, that they were paralyzed, and the two adults were just possessed by something. So the father runs in the room and hits the mother with an axe, and that's where it transitions back to, well, I guess we could transition back to the mother killing Agent, what's her name?
Browning.
Browning
So
in the
she comes
car
up and shoots her right in
from
the face with a
the
shotgun.
driver's side, and then she runs behind the car and shoots her from the other side too.
So the entire car just covered in blood.
Hmm.
Um, and then she walks a different direction. Harker hears this and comes back outside to look to find out because obviously she knows she hasn't found her mom yet. So I think at that point she knew her mom was outside doing this.
Yeah. Well, she was
Finds her
alerted by the
mom.
gunfire.
Yeah, finds her mom standing like I think almost in between the garage and the house, it kind of looked like to me, with
Hmm.
her gun pointed at what you thought at first might be a little girl. Come to find out it was another doll that looked exactly like Harker as a 9-year-old girl.
Yeah, it was the same as the flashback at the beginning of the movie. So
Hmm.
she had pigtails. It looked exactly like her.
Yeah. So I don't even remember the exact words that were said. It was something like, why are you doing this? And different things. And it resulted in the mom shooting the doll in the head.
Mhm. And as she shot the doll, it released black smoke from the doll head and Parker's head also.
Hmm.
So is as to say that something was possessing her. So
Hmm.
that's what I go back to saying, that maybe she was so odd because her essence or whatever was possessing her or the magic within her made her this odd. And it kind of seemed like that she maybe even took this job because she was led to take that job, even though they kind
Hmm.
of criticized her. Maybe they wanted her to do that so they wouldn't be able to get caught, that they would be able to do what they wanted to do, Longlegs and the mother, because at this point, you know that they're both cooperating within the murders, and that's essentially how it's revealed, is that the mother made a deal that day from the beginning of the movie on her birthday that he wouldn't kill her as long as she cooperated in the murders. So that's how she then transitioned to being the nun, and she would go house to house and deliver a doll to the kid that looked exactly like them. And she wouldn't have anything to do with the murders. She would just sit back and watch. But that's how he was conducting the murders. So not even Longlegs was doing the murders. It was just the possession or the magic within the doll that was putting everybody in a trance and killing everybody, which is still evil. I mean, he was an evil character, but that was my theory. I mean, that's looking at it, that's why she was so odd, because that doll was still holding some type of grounds over her life rather than that she actually was that way. Because maybe if she was normal, she would have spent more time with her mom, and that was a device, that doll. which was able to keep her away from her mom. So that's why she never went and seen her mom, or they had such tension because maybe she, even though she didn't remember some of the things that happened, but she knew from a distance that her mom was so weird that maybe she should stay away. But I think it was more the doll and Longlegs and her mother saying or telling the doll or whatever they were using the doll for to stay away. So she wouldn't further investigate what was going on with them, but they would still use her as a device to still commit murders if she was an FBI agent.
Hmm. So after she shoots the doll, Parker has the stuff come out as well and passes out. And then it cuts to her waking up like on a mattress laying on the floor and looks around and she's in Longlegs doll workshop.
And
So
it's
she
been in
looks,
her mother's house the whole time.
yeah, she discovers that it's in her mom's basement. Cue back to what Browning said a little bit before. He's right below your feet in the basement.
Hmm.
It's been in her mom's basement this whole time. So the
And
locked
that's maybe
door,
what
all those things made sense.
may be why she got those psychic flashes is because that when she tried to open the door and she had those flashes, like you shouldn't be here, and like
Hmm.
kind of maybe to sway her off the way. So maybe she was giving those suggestions to the doll the whole time, and she would have those flashbacks, and that would sway her, try to sway her away. But maybe she had so much strength within her that she decided to do what she wanted to do, even though she wasn't whole at the time, quote unquote.
Yeah. So she comes upstairs, goes outside. Obviously, she can't take Browning's car. It's completely covered in brains and blood and whatever. And her mom's car is missing. So it cuts to Harker driving down the road in Longlegs' car,
Hmm.
which is weird because the last time you saw somebody driving the car was when he was doing that weird screaming thing. And now she's racing down the road in his car, not screaming, but obviously still as upset. So it just kind of brings it around. And you're trying to figure out where she's racing to. You see her pull into a driveway, and it's actually Agent Carter's driveway.
Hmm.
And I didn't notice it immediately, but eventually I looked over, and the mom's car was also in Carter's driveway.
Yeah.
So she has her gun drawn, goes up to the front door, gets, knocks, tries to get in, and Carter answers the door. Oh, I'm so glad you made it to the birthday party. Come on in. And doesn't even question that she has her gun drawn, anything like that, that she's clearly visibly upset.
Because he
And
would
he's,
obviously know that that's her mother and like what the
hmm.
hell are you doing here? So it's kind of like as she approaches the house because she was in her nun get up and all that with the doll because the doll after she goes inside is right by Carter's daughter and she's in a trance over the doll. But as soon as she arrives to the door, that has to snap in a trance over anyone that she arrives to their house with, the doll.
Hmm. Yeah, it doesn't, the fact that she's a nun, I think, but I think the doll is so powerful that it even takes over before she gets to the door.
Yeah.
So she goes inside for the birthday party, and come to find out it's the 14th is the daughter's birthday, but it's also Agent Harker's birthday.
Mhm.
So they share this birthday.
And I think
And
that was purposely in line that they found this person. It could be a double meaning. So they were trying to either eliminate the FBI agent, and the mother knew that if she was to kill a replacement on her birthday, that that would release her from the
Mhm.
long legs deal that she made. And also that I forgot what point I'm going to make, but that was there was two meanings. That was one of them was to her release her. But that's what I was going to say is that maybe they thought also Longlegs and the mother that if we eliminate this FBI agent, they won't further look into the case, or they'll just have
Mhm.
one less person looking into the case.
Well, and they would eliminate the one person who seemed to wholeheartedly believe Agent Harker.
Yeah,
because it seemed to me like everyone else still had some doubts about
apprehension.
her. Yeah.
Well, I mean, even I don't think so because I think once they found out or did the test, everything was on board because there was no active resistance. What can
I
you think
felt
there
like
was
there
any resistance?
I felt like there still was a little because they were constantly almost like protecting her. Like, are you sure you're okay? Do you think you can handle this? Are you sure you're okay?
I think that's
It
just
was
normal
little,
things.
maybe
I
it
don't
is.
I don't think that's nothing to add or to say that it was them trying to hinder anything she did because there's nothing they did that would indicate trying to hold her down.
No, I don't think it was a hindrance. I think they were still just trying to protect her. Maybe just because she was young. Maybe it didn't even have anything to do with the fact that she had these abilities. It might have just been that she was that, but it could be just normal and I took it for something else. So they go into the living room and of course her mom's sitting there in the nun habit. The daughter is on the couch just completely entranced with this doll and Agent Carter and his wife are acting very strange. So you can tell that it's taken over. And she looks at her mom and her mom says it's too late. It's already done. There's nothing you can do.
Mhm. And
And
Agent Carter kept on saying or referring to, well, I'm going to go get the cakes and cut the cakes. He kept on saying over and over, I'm going to cut the cakes.
and then he said, "We need to go cut the cakes." And he's like, "My I'm going to take." He made his wife go with him and he says or the wife says, "We'll be right back." And he goes, "Or she won't be, but I will." And they go in the kitchen to cut the cakes and you can hear him stabbing her in the kitchen.
Hmm.
So at this point, Harker's trying to reason with her mom. There's got to be a way. And she's like, no, there's nothing we can do. There's nothing that can change this. This is how it has to be. And so then Carter comes back out of the kitchen holding this knife completely covered in blood, starts coming towards them, and Harker ends up shooting him. So then at that point, still turns to,
Shot at him, I think connected twice before she finally hit him in the head and he died.
yeah, so three shots.
And that's what
Then
we're talking about. The, excuse me, the day of, I didn't know if it was a five shot or a shot revolver. You said it was five, or you
I
thought it
think
was,
it's a five based off the
I could
image of the
remember.
cylinder, but I don't know for sure.
Hmm.
So then reasoning with her mom doesn't work, and so she actually ends up shooting her mom too and gets her mom first thing headshot. So at that point, we're at four shots.
Hmm.
Turns around and goes to shoot the doll because she's trying to get the daughter to come with her and leave, and her gun won't
She did
fire.
at first, and then she went away from the doll, and then she went back to the doll. But she
Mhm.
knew that she had to eliminate the doll in order to stop the evil.
Yeah. But the gun wouldn't shoot. And
Hmm.
she couldn't have been out of bullets at that point because we both really thought of, and there was no more than four shots. So even if it was a five shot, there should have been at least one more in there.
Yeah,
So it's like the doll still had enough power to where it wouldn't allow the gun to function.
yeah, which was weird because if her doll was completely destroyed, maybe the ball bearing wasn't destroyed. So maybe that's what continued to have power over her. That's the only
Maybe.
thing I could assume.
Well,
But
and at some point, a little bit before this, it was revealed that Carrie Ann Camera ended up throwing herself off a roof the day before on
the
the 13th.
the woman or the girl that grew up in the mental institute, that's who it was.
Mhm.
And that's what I
Yeah.
was saying. I think that's what broke her curse is that they cut the ball in half, and that's what
Mhm.
completely released her. The ball bearing that was in the side of the head of the doll that the FBI examiner cut through. So I think that's what finally released her, and that's what I'm referring to now is that maybe that's what still possessed Agent Harker is that the ball bearing was still intact and whatever was in there, even though
Mhm.
they destroyed the doll, that still could have had leftover magic or resonance in that to still keep her from the gun firing. So that's how the movie ended. It ended open-ended. She took the daughter out of there and the door closed and that was it. I hope they don't make a sequel to that, like as to say that these things are still out there or because I really like movies like that where you just go into the unknown. Like you keep on thinking about it, like what could have happened, like the thing where you don't know what exactly happened afterwards. Instead of having a sequel to explain things or the further things, I think they would do a massive injustice if they did a sequel to this movie.
Yeah, I mean, it would pale in comparison to this one because I don't know how they would ever make it to where Longlegs could come back.
Hmm.
And he, as good a job acting as she did throughout the whole movie, really selling her character. I don't know how in the world you would ever do this movie without him because he just the creepy factor absolutely resonated with
Because
him.
he couldn't have been in the movie more than 4 continuous minutes.
Yeah, it
But he
was
had such a presence that that's how powerful it was.
yeah, it was very I definitely agree. No sequel. Leave it open-ended. Some people don't like open-ended movies. I don't mind them. I don't always have to have a tied up conclusion, put the bow on
I don't
top.
like
Sometimes I
conclusions.
like
I
things.
always like open-ended.
Yeah. I think it depends on the movie for me, but I don't mind them being left open. I like it. So, but yeah, leaving it open for the option of a sequel on this
Kind
one,
of
I don't
like
think
kind
with.
of like this Shawshank Redemption where they left it open, where Andy and Red lovers after that.
Yeah,
Left
maybe.
up to your
Yeah.
imagination.
Oh, ruined movies for me. But yeah, open ending on this one. I mean, it almost adds to the movie because then you're left up to imagine all the million different things that could possibly happen
Mhm.
because you know the doll's not destroyed and you
Yeah.
know that she's probably not free of any of this because obviously when you're dealing with a power this strong, the two humans being dead in the equation doesn't necessarily mean that any of the evil is gone.
Yeah.
So
So overall, what did you think of the movie?
So I surprisingly, knowing that I don't get into, and again, I don't want to, it's a horror movie, but it's not. Like you said, we don't get into don't go into the basement because the killer's in the basement horror movies.
Yeah.
And I'm usually not even the one that seeks out like the dark, suspenseful types of movies. I actually really enjoyed the movie. I think we talked about it afterwards, like even 20 minutes later in the car ride home, we both still felt like the
It's
presence of
still
the
within the
movie
movie.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't like, some movies it's over and by the time you walk out, you're like, okay, well that was fun and you're
Because we
done.
went
Like
to Target
this,
and I still felt that way.
yeah, it was so creepy it lingered
Hmm.
later, which was again not something I normally like, but in this movie it was just so well done and you get so immersed in it. It was interesting to have that feeling stick with you for so long. The couple parts of the movie that weren't so great, the quick surrenders and the strange, like all of a sudden they were arresting him, those couple of things were really the only negatives that I can say. So I was going to give it probably an 8.5, just because I think the acting in the movie and the cinematography, the way they shot it, did so much for that feeling. Like you said, all the darkness and the feeling of ominence was just very well done by a
Ominence?
skeleton. Ominous?
Okay, I thought you said ominence. I was like,
Oh,
what's ominence?
well, like it's ominous, so
I know,
ominence.
I know.
Oh,
I know
okay.
what you meant.
It's a word
But
now.
that's what
Uh,
I was gonna ask you, what you gave it, like a 1 to 10. We are gonna have one Nick Cage head out of 10, and I was gonna put up the Nick Cage uncaged heads, or just maybe regular Nick Cage for a rating.
yeah. I think I'll give it an 8 because it really was a phenomenal movie. You
Hmm.
definitely walk away from it with different feelings. And like I said, the just the two of them, I mean, everybody in the movie I felt like did a very great job acting. There wasn't a single person where I was like, oh, that person didn't need to be in the movie. because there was so few people in the movie, it kept it pretty simple.
Yeah.
I think I'll give it an 8.
Okay. For me, I really enjoyed just the evil feeling as the movie progressed, that it really just sucked you into the movie. And that's what I liked about it, just a dark feeling. And like we explained at the beginning of the movie, that's the type of movies I like, but I never seen like the Friday the 13th, the Jason, the Halloween. I've only seen Halloween 3, and I really like that movie just because of the feeling that I get. And I think that's more of the movies that I go for, even if it's like I never seen Count of Monte Cristo, and that movie has a good feeling to it. And it's just more, that's what I go by. But I think it's just really odd that you had that feeling after the movie that is something like this truly evil. Like they put something in it. It kind of makes you wonder why you felt like that after. It is, that's how overwhelming it is, as to say, not that there really is anything, but just pulls you in that much. I, the only problems that I had with the movie is how the killer was caught in the beginning, and how Longlegs just was sitting there with suitcases. I think besides that and the mystery of why they wrote it like that was, I think would send me to, from being almost perfect scary movie to a 7. And I think just those two little things just kind of not so much wrecked it, but it skewed my liking of it because they were, it was just badly written. They could have did those parts so much better, I think, in my opinion. Even if she went in and shot the guy because caught him off guard or something, or if Longlegs was leaving from, which I think was presumed, from the hardware store, and that's where they picked him up from, but he had
Mhm.
suitcases, and I don't know, it was kind of nonsensical, but that was my thoughts of the movie. I think I give it a 7, even though it was such a good movie. The acting was so good, and that's what I'm also big on, is acting and dialogue, and both of those were excellent.
I agree.
So, if you have anything else to say, do you have anything else?
No, look forward to more Nick Cage movies. He's got so many of them.
Yeah,
So we'll have lots more reviews to come.
and I hope you look forward to more uncaged episodes like this. That's what I look forward to doing. And that's the first episode of Uncaged. Hope you liked it.
Thanks, everybody.